Okay, if you run a company, one of the big questions is, should you lease the space that you're in, or should you go ahead and buy the building? We're going to dig into that on this segment. All right, on this segment, we're going to have a conversation about real estate. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do it is a lot of my clients struggle with the idea, should I own the building that I'm in or should I lease the building that I'm in? And if I'm going to make a change, what's the smartest way to do it? So to help me with that, I have a guest here, somebody I've known for a long time. It's my son, Graham Nabity. Graham works for CBRE Mega Corporation. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dad.
Yeah,
nice
glad
knowing
to.
you.
Yeah, nice knowing you. So, you've been doing a bang-up job in real estate, working with a lot of people that I know. And I got to ask you a question. Let's say you've got a startup company. It's taken them maybe 3 years to get their legs under them. They've been leasing a building, and they need more space. When do you, as a business owner, say, you know what? Rather than paying somebody else rent, it's time for me to buy a building?
Yeah, I think you've made up a great point about how some of these business owners starting out, leasing probably makes the most sense because you don't know how big you're going to end up being. What's your sweet spot? And so as you get farther along, maybe you've had some consistent years where you've had similar growth, similar employee counts. And I think once you get to something along those lines, you could probably look into owning more. And you absolutely could own right out the gate too. You could eventually sell buildings, and if you buy right, you can typically sell
flip them
at a good price too. But for most of the clients, leasing is the route that they go. It's a little bit less expensive up front, less build out, and just overall costs. You don't have the down payment. You just have your security deposit and whatever build outs you have to make the space work. But over time, you do see a lot of these guys who kind of switch over to starting that wealth building. And on the real estate side, there's a lot of beautiful pros to that, but some more responsibilities too that comes with ownership.
Now, obviously, when you start looking at buying a building, you got to come up with a down payment. Yeah. What's the percentage that you have to put down these days?
Yeah, usually it's around 20 to 25% of the purchase price or the loan. And so with that, sometimes you can do an SBA and it might be 10%. There's going to be a lot more legwork you have to go through, and it takes more time. So if you're buying a good building and maybe there's a lot of competition, it might be a little bit trickier to get it closed if you've got multiple offers. But the SBA route is a good one. You usually just need to own about 51% of the building. So some of these people will buy a bigger building that might have different tenants, and as long as you're
different
occupying
owners, you're saying
different tenants in the space. So maybe a portion of the building is a space that they're going to move into, and just think about like a retail strip. You got multiple tenants. And so as long as you're occupying 51%, usually you can get the SBA loan.
So you're saying you can get the financing if you're going to buy a 10,000 square foot place, as long as you have 5,100 square feet, they will finance
for
the whole
SBA.
For SBA.
Yep.
What about if you go to the banks?
Yep, same thing. They'd just be back to that higher down payment of 20 to 25% of the purchase price.
Is it hard to get an SBA loan? I mean, is it?
There's more like hoops and stuff you have to go through.
What about the financial requirements?
It's no different than.
No different.
Yeah, there's not going to be. There might be a little bit more cost of getting a loan settled with SBA. There's just more work behind it, more documentation. But
a lot of the people that we work with, they need warehousing space, and they need some open space outside to be able to store trucks and different things. How hard is it to find space like that today?
So there's 4 main food groups with commercial real estate. You've got office, you've got retail, you've got apartments, the investment side of things, and then you've got industrial. And so that industrial, out of all those, they have the absolute lowest vacancy rate. What a vacancy rate is out of all the available spaces for lease, it's how much is vacant. And so vacancy rate in our market has, for the last 3 years, been well below 3%. And if you take out the big box, the large industrial buildings that you might see over by the data centers, the basically 40,000 feet and up. You take those guys out, our vacancy rate in Omaha, and for the most part across the country, is basically below a percent. And so
you're kidding me.
When it comes to leasing industrial space, it's really hard to come by, specifically when you factor in the outside storage. Now that component, it's harder to come by because there's a lot of zoning regulations, and with that, if you have an office complex, they're not going to want to have a storage yard next door. They want something a little bit cleaner, or like a retail spot.
Well, so you have to go into industrial.
Yeah, these industrial pockets, there's not that many out there. We don't have a ton of future use of industrial for the planning board around the Omaha Metro. So there's a real bottleneck. And it really all started back when a lot of the retailers came over to the industrial space because they're selling more product online. They need more of the logistics and less walk-in traffic servicing. So there's a huge demand for it.
That sounds to me like you can't find land to build a building on either then.
It's harder to do. There's still some more on the outskirts. You're seeing a lot getting built up around the outside. So as you go down Dodge and head over to Waterloo and Valley, you're seeing a ton of flex buildings getting built up.
Oh, yeah.
The Ryan Gradups of the world building those really nice-looking flex buildings. That caters to the warehouse people as well as someone who just wants to have a retail spot.
Let's talk about leasing versus owning. What sort of advice would you give to somebody? Maybe they got 5,000 square feet now, and somehow or other they were lucky enough to find 30,000 square feet, but they're leasing it. What advice would you give to somebody as they start thinking about going into a lease?
Oh, I mean, I could go a lot of ways with that. The devil's in the details. With leases, you got to really make sure you're reviewing that thing. And I'm not an attorney. My opinion doesn't stand. But I can at least help you guide and talk what is market, what kind of terms are we seeing that's favorable. The thing about commercial real estate, you don't have all these fair housing rules and laws. Everything's negotiable. So you got some landlords that have some pretty hefty leases that could just simply move you per their terms. And so
at CBRE, though, don't you guys have a sense of the market rates?
Yeah, we've got all the market rents. Yeah, we can help out with that. But there's just different clauses in the lease and a lot of the legal jargon that I would say you have to be most careful about. One of the biggest issues that some of my clients have had is they've missed their renewal dates. So when you do a new lease, you usually have some built-in options to renew. So let's say you're in that 30,000 feet. You have a 5-year lease. Well, you might have 2 options to renew for 5 years. So you can control the asset for 15 years, but you're only on the hook for 5 years. And that's nice for these companies that are growing and they don't know how much space they really need. They don't want to have not enough space, so their business is hurting. They don't want too much where they're paying too much. So both ways, having that flexibility, but a longer track record of controlling the asset is why you have these options to renew. But the problem that some of my clients had is, and they were clients before I got to meet them, is that they missed their date in which they can renew. Usually it's somewhere between 6 to 9 months prior to the expiration date. And so you miss that date, then your option's gone. And then just like that, the neighboring tenant could be talking to the landlord and be expanding into your space and you're kicked
done
to the street. Or say the owner sold the building and the new buyers want to occupy your space and they've been waiting for that date that you need to renew by or give notice and you don't. And so you're kicked to the street. So I've had probably 4 clients that are new clients that came to me because of they got kicked out of the street and they love their space. One of the cons of owning real estate is you don't have as much control.
So
when you're
you
leasing,
said one of the cons of leasing.
One of the cons of leasing is you don't have the control. Yeah.
Okay. So as I work with clients that are looking at transitioning in toward retirement, if we've worked with them to help them make sure they got the right people to run the company and whatever drama that might have existed, we've worked through it. So we have a good transition plan. Oftentimes, the owner will own the building that the business has been operating in for a long time. And what's nice about that is they can still own the building, even though they've sold the company or transitioned the company, and they can use the building for rental income
Yeah.
to help support them through retirement.
Totally.
And it's better than buying a bond that's paying interest. And if you know the tenant,
that's the risk is
you're
going to have a vacant building, and your other risk is the repairs. So,
that's a good point.
You remove the big one, which is vacancy. And the good thing, depending on your property, we're talking an office building, more risk on vacancy. Industrial usually will re-tenant pretty well. So knowing your tenant is great, because you want to make sure they're taking care of your building and that there's not any negligence and deferred maintenance happening. Because as an owner, the biggest cons are having to front the repairs. But again, that commercial lease, sometimes a lot of those repairs can be on the tenant. Well, and so you can really make it a sweet deal for you to retain the real estate.
You can take a part of your income off the property and just store it for repairs too, right? Yep. I mean, but the amount of cash flow you'll get off of rents off of owning a building are going to be higher based on everything that I've seen than if you just put money in a bond and wanted to get your 3 to 5% interest.
Depends on if you buy it right.
Yeah.
Because your loan, once you factor in your loan, that's going to affect your cash flow, of course. And so no loan considered in there, the market rents are continuing to go up for industrial and really all the food groups. And so there's just so many other benefits of real estate is the appreciation. So you only own 20% of an asset, but you get the full benefit of owning 100% of the asset when it comes to appreciation. And on the flip side, depreciation, when it comes to tax time, you get all these nice write-offs. When you only have 20% of your skin in the game, but you get the benefit of the full write-off on 100% of the asset. And that's just one of the differences with putting the money in the stock market is you're only getting 100% of what you put in. Here, I can put the same amount of money and have, double, triple of that being a benefit for write-offs as well as appreciation.
One of the things I'll see clients do is they'll pay above market rents to an LLC that owns the real estate, and then they can take the profits from those rents out of the LLC without paying payroll tax. And so it's a really great way of being able to move money out of a corporation into an LLC and save some tax money. I see that quite a bit, but I also see situations where people will own their properties in their own names and not have it inside of an LLC. Do you have any recommendations on how people should own properties?
Yeah. I would first say not a CPA, but we look at this a lot, so definitely have a CPA looking into that. But there's just a lot more write-offs you can have when you have that LLC or however you have your entity set up, and the liability. You can remove your personal assets by doing that. So strongly encourage that.
Let's talk about that for a minute. If you don't have the property inside of an entity like an LLC, limited liability company, and someone trips on your property and hits their head and dies, you can be sued by having something on your property that would cause somebody to trip. Yeah,
there's negligence there. And you have slip and falls. I mean, you have an ongoing business. So I'm not sure you could get the correct insurance policy if it's underneath your name. I think sometimes it has to go more in the entity in the commercial.
The whole point of that is if somebody sues you, they can not only sue you against the real estate, they can go after every one of your assets. Yeah. Whereas if it's in a limited liability company, they can only go after that.
The assets in that company.
And they can't go past it. Now, one of the things I think about is if you do buy a property and it's way more than you need, based on what you just said, there's probably plenty of other people that'll come in and lease your extra space.
Yeah, just depends on the class. I mean, we're talking office buildings.
No, I'm back to industrial, back to the warehousing.
As long as it, financially makes sense to get that demising wall, you get that fire-rated wall that splits up whatever the space is, and the building is set up to be multi-tenanted, and you've got bathrooms in there. Totally, yeah. That there's a lot of need for warehouse space, and the smaller square footage you have, the more demand, the more fish in the pond.
So where should somebody be looking for land, in your opinion, if existing buildings are not on the market for purchase?
There's some that's just the owner-user pricing for those. They're a lot higher.
Owner-user?
So an owner-user, think about like a house. A homeowner would emotionally be more willing to pay a higher price on a house because it's the dream house. It checks all the boxes than maybe an investor would, because they know they can only get so much in rent. They have a ceiling, but a homeowner, there's no ceiling. There's all emotion.
Well, they're willing to overlook all that,
right,
because they want to live in the house.
Yeah, and so on a business owner, there's no ceiling to how much money a business owner can make in a building. So if the building works for that business, no one can tell that business owner how much money they can make other than them and how they run their business. So the owner users will always pay more in industrial than an investor. I guess never say never, or always, but typically owner users will pay more. So there are products out there. I've got a few listings right now for sale that are industrial, and the pricing on those are really high because that's what we're seeing the owner users
There's just
being
more
willing to
demand
pay.
for them.
Correct.
So the price goes up. So what's going on in office building? You've kind of hinted that like the office building side of things is completely different than the industrial and manufacturing side. What's going on with offices?
Well, the whole COVID scare, everybody thought these office parks would never have people in them anymore. And that was an extreme, overreaction. But really in our market, we're a lot better than the others. Our vacancy rate in the office is around that 10%, where you got some of these other bigger cities and they're 30 to 40%. There's some downtowns that the commercial real estate agents in that area, because at CBRE, we're all over the world. And so I've got colleagues in some of these big cities. They don't even report back to their office because it's just the crime is too crazy. But backing up on all that, the Class B type of product is hurting the most when it comes to vacancy. And
what would be a Class B? Wow.
So there's a few Class A office parks. So what makes an office building Class A is location. So think about that Dodge, north of Dodge, 132nd to 144th. You got a few new Class A office buildings, the Carson and UBT on 144th and Dodge.
Those would be big money in rent, so right?
The rents are the best, but you look at the building, the cost to build that building is far greater than a warehouse metal building, right?
No question.
So these Class A office buildings, their vacancy is actually really good. The businesses,
it's low. The vacancy is low.
So as an owner, that's good.
I drive by that one out on, I think it's 180th and Dodge, and it's got the big fountain in front of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much fully leased.
Are you serious?
That's the R&R, yeah.
It looks
they have
empty,
they have a sublease kind of coming through right now, but the businesses, they're making money. Some of them are hybrid. Some people are working from home. Some of them are taking less space, but they have a flight to quality. They're renting nicer spaces, nicer finishes, because they need less space because they do have a hybrid product. But I feel like for the most part, our market, most people are back to the office. But the Class B is what's hurting. So to define a Class A, it's location. It's the absolute top of the line finishes. So you've got some Class B buildings that really are B because of the finishes that those owners haven't remodeled in
some of the exteriors are really bad.
Yeah. And
right?
sometimes you can't do much with that. But the third component is underground parking. It's hard to say you have a Class A office building if you don't have underground parking, and then having the amenities in the property, having your fitness, and just other kind of coffee kiosk.
So when you say B is hurting,
B is hurting because these owners are not updating their buildings.
And what's their vacancy like?
Yeah, it's over 10%. Like if you look at 120th in Blondo, 108th in Blondo, that old mill, Miracle Hills office park vacancy is definitely in the double digits.
Well, if you go down Dodge to 114th Street and you look north, there's like a whole thing that's empty.
Yeah, that's that retail strip. And yeah, they've been slowly making a comeback on remodeling and getting new tenants there. But then you have a lot of office buildings back behind that. And
Those are A. A lot of them back there are A, right?
More B. Yeah. The
Is that
A
right?
the A is more west.
So if I'm a businessman and I have my team around the table and we're out of space, and we need 10,000, 20,000 more square feet for what we're doing, what's the starting point? How do you begin to analyze? How do you move to the next level?
Yeah, I think when it comes to business expenses, the real estate is probably up there in cost and in importance, because some of like these warehouse users, if you don't have enough space, you can't get enough inventory in there, or you can't get the access, and maybe you need dock doors, or maybe you only need drive-in doors. Maybe you need a ceiling height that's to a certain point to triple, double, whatever rack the product. So the biggest thing is what is the sweet spot of what they need, and
who can help them
location-wise.
figure that out?
Yeah, so absolutely using a commercial real estate agent.
So a firm like yours would do that.
Yeah, and that's and when you're a tenant or a buyer, it's for the most part, our fees are on market, on the market listing side. So like you see in homes,
The buyer's not paying it.
yeah, the buyer. So essentially, it's foolish not to use a commercial real estate agent. And I keep saying commercial because we've got a lot of residential agents that they don't know their stuff. And it's to the point now where if you have an office-focused commercial real estate agent representing you on warehouse space, even that's kind of a disservice, because they're an expert in office. You need to be using an expert in warehouse. And so I have been focusing mostly on warehouse, where when it comes to office and retail deals, I usually will pass that off to other people in my office, because I am not the expert in those two classes. So I keep saying commercial.
You have peers.
You want to make sure you got good expertise there, and it's not a cost to you.
Okay, so let's say you're hunting around town and you just can't find anything to lease. What do?
You keep looking, but you definitely want to consider both. I mean, if you got the cash to do the down payment, once you get past that, there's just a lot of reasons why gravitating towards ownership would make sense. But at the end of the day,
from a wealth building standpoint, it's a no-brainer. If the owners of the company, maybe they got an S corporation and they got to do distributions, and the distributions are piling up on their financial statement, you got a choice of going into the stock market. You got a choice of going into mutual funds. You got a choice of going into bonds or banks. Going into real estate is a no-brainer if the tenant is your company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know how you don't do that.
Once you're established, and if you can buy your building, absolutely. But if you're in the market, you're looking to buy a new building. You mean
buy or build?
Buy, build, whatever, lease. But on the purchase side, if you are overpaying for a building, or maybe you're not overpaying, maybe the market says it is that, you still have to factor in what your debt's going to be. And with the higher interest rates that we've had these last few years, it slowed up the commercial market some. So it's never truly a no-brainer. But yeah, there's a lot.
Tenant finish, updating.
Tenant finish, because sometimes the landlord will contribute in the tenant finish, and you're the tenant, so you might not have all the cash for all that. So you factor in, you're the one buying it. Now you're fully responsible for the tenant finish. And if a repair happens, you're fully responsible. So I'd say the no-brainer scenarios would definitely be, you're selling your business. The business is doing great. You had a great sale. And the space that you're in is great. Yeah, a no-brainer would be keeping the real estate and just selling the business, because to your point earlier, now the tenant's profitable, they're doing well, and they can afford the rent, and you get a nice long 10-year lease.
It's like a pension.
You get that set up, and then you get all the depreciation benefits. You always hear Trump not paying all this tax. Well, it's because of real estate. And so some of that stuff's a no-brainer. And I'd say first things first, though, is you got to have someone on your team looking out for your best interests, and that can give you that advice on all of the different scenarios when it comes to choosing whether to lease, where to lease, or to purchase.
So let me come back to this. I'm ready to buy a piece of ground. I'm willing to build it myself. Where do they start?
first would be what part of town do you want to be? But yeah, usually when it comes down to the starting points is having that property picked out, making sure you have enough land.
Yeah, but it isn't the issue that there isn't enough property out there to buy.
There's some.
Aren't
out
you
there.
limited on where you can
You
go?
are. Yeah, you are. And so your commute times are very important, especially in the logistics of warehousing and distribution. That where you go is important. But as long as you're pretty close to the interstate, whether you're on the north side, Blair High Road, on that side, you're 5-10 minutes from main Omaha, where Interstate 80 and Dodge meet, or you continue to go down south and west where the market's really hot. As long as you're not too far off of the beaten path onto the interstate highways, you can go.
Do guys like you ever knock on doors of landowners and say, "Hey, I have somebody interested in buying your property"?
Yep, definitely. I've done a few of those myself, and on a lot of cold calls too. I mean, sometimes I'm calling on some dead people, and I feel so bad. I didn't realize John passed away last year, so that happens a lot too. But yeah, I've done a lot of land sales. Some of them sold to the Google data centers. You hate to see it, but you can't stop it.
I can't believe how big those places are.
Yeah,
it blows me away.
Square feet. Yeah, they got 300 plus acres over on Blair High Road and north of the interstate there. And I sold the first 250 acres of that kicked off that deal. So, yeah, you've got a lot of, those farmhouses that are
been in the family a long time.
Yeah. And you don't want to sell, and they live there. And yeah, so it's a slow process, but usually it ends up being a pretty sweet thing for the family when they get that nice cash.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here. What if somebody wants to get a hold of you and have you sit down at the table and have you help them kind of sort this all out? How should they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way is seeing me on LinkedIn. I'm really not on the social media platforms anymore. But yeah, you can shoot me a call at my cell phone, 402-680-4651, or my email. It's Graham, Graham, Nabity, N-A-B as in boy, I-T-Y, at CBRE.com. So shoot me a call, an email, or see me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to help.
All right. I hope this conversation about real estate might have been some value to you. I run into this all the time. And again, I want to encourage you, if you own a company and you have the ability to buy the land and the building and lease it to your own company, it's an awesome way to move money out of the business into your LLC and take income out without payroll taxes. But in addition to that, if you do it right, it ends up becoming a great pension for you when you retire. So that's it for this segment today. Hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for our next podcast. Have a great night.